Welcome back to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Dave Edwards. So glad that you're tuning in with us today to be a part of the conversation. My guest today is Jim Priest, who is the CEO at Sunbeam Family Services right here in Oklahoma City. So, Jim, welcome back.
Hey, Dave.
Glad you're here. Thanks so much. For people who don't know, kind of give us an overview of what Sunbeam is, what it does.
It's a really interesting agency. It's been around for 110 years. It's kind of hard to believe we've been around as a state for about that long. So Sunbeam started as a home for neglected and abandoned children. It was started by a lady named Lizzie Swisher, who came down from Kansas, Wichita, Kansas, on what she called her missionary work to minister to the kids who had been abandoned in the land rush, basically. And so she rented a house, began taking kids in, and the organization over the years has morphed now where we do 4 core programs. We do a great deal of work in early childhood. We have a program called Educare, which is like child care on steroids. It's very intense for children of impoverished families. We do sliding scale counseling. We do foster care, recruitment and placement. And we do senior services, an array of services for seniors, usually age 55 and older. And we have the state's only homeless shelter for senior citizens on our campus at 14th and Classen.
That is incredible. What an amazing legacy. And how long have you been there?
I've been there 2 years. I was a trial lawyer for 34 years, and then the Lord opened up this opportunity for me to come to Sunbeam, and it's been a wonderful position.
That's powerful. I mean, that's an amazing thing. So today's issue is we're going to talk about seniors, which is one of your services, and the topic we want to zero in on is grandparents raising grandchildren. Now, I have to say, as I've traveled around, I've seen this a lot. It seems to be prevalent, and I've seen it in churches and outside of churches and neighborhoods. So, how did this whole program come about?
Well, we started what we call GRG, Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, in 2003 under the auspices of a federal grant. And so we work with area-wide aging agency to equip and to support and encourage grandparents who are raising their grandchildren without the actual biological parent being in the home. Probably 30 years ago, this was not a problem. It really wasn't an issue.
Right.
But in the last 25 or 30 years, it has taken on epic proportion. And we have probably across the United States about 1 million grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. Here in central Oklahoma alone, there are over 6,000 families where grandparents are raising grandchildren. And they range from, maybe one child whose parent died, and so they go live with grandma and grandpa, to we have a lady that we help in our program who's raising 9 of her own grandchildren. So she's a single grandparent raising 9 grandkids, and so think about all the problems that result from that. You've got the emotional, the physical stress, the financial stress, people that are in the latter stages of their lives who never expected, I'm going to be taking on child rearing again with all that entails from me individually, as well as all the financial help that I need. And so Sunbeam comes alongside those grandparents raising grandchildren. We serve about 200 families in a 4-county area, and we partner with a group called Triad, which is a really cool volunteer organization consisting of the Sheriff's Department, the Oklahoma County Sheriff. John Wetzel's been very instrumental in that. Local city police departments, Oklahoma City and Midwest City Police Department, for example, and then volunteer groups of seniors. And it's really a crime reduction, crime prevention problem that Triad tries to conquer. But part of that also, they partner with us in sponsoring a back to school backpack program for grandparents raising grandkids, as well as a holiday program where we all get together. We just did this last Saturday at a downtown church, and we do a holiday program and gift giveaway where we have donations for those grandparents raising grandchildren. We have a lady, she's just unbelievable, Odessa Ross, who knits 700 winter caps every year for the grandkids that are being raised by grandchildren. And I was talking to her the other day, and I said, on the day of the event, as we were giving them away, I said, when will you start next year? She goes, oh, this afternoon. She said, I got to be busy, so
wow.
I got to start this afternoon.
700 caps.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
She's busy.
Well, Jim, why are the numbers so high? I mean, you said like 30 years ago, like I would have never thought that would even be an issue.
Right.
So what is it that's driven these numbers up so much?
Yeah, we've seen really the evolution of the grandparent from somebody who maybe lived far away or maybe lived in town, but you'd see them occasionally, go visit grandpa and grandma,
right.
to now they are the residential parent for these grandkids. And it's driven principally by the high level of substance abuse, causing parents to either be incarcerated or in treatment or just not engaged in raising their kids. And then the second consequence, particularly in the state of Oklahoma, is the high rate of incarceration, particularly of women. We are number one among the 50 states in the percentage of women that we incarcerate. We've tended in the past to be a lock 'em up and throw away the key approach. That has changed a little bit in recent year or maybe the last 6 months. We're beginning to see some changes in policy where we understand a first-time substance abuse offense, perhaps the better option is to send that person to treatment and do supervision, keep them in the home and in the community rather than to lock them up and send them to prison. So those are the two things that combine to make it such an epidemic.
And so what can an individual and the church do to help? What are the roles? And I know it's obvious that you guys are doing all you can do, right? But so what can the church do, and what can maybe someone who's watching do?
Right. I was thinking about when I grew up in an evangelical small church, we were always a little wary of what we call the social gospel. You know, people that help people that are in distress. And instead, they need to preach the gospel to them. That's what they need Jesus. They don't need a cup of cold water. Well, Jesus said, he who gives a cup of cold water in my name.
That's right.
What the church can do and what individual believers can do is to recognize there's a tremendous need out there. And it's probably right in your own church. If you pay attention, you'll know that there are grandparents raising grandkids. Mm-hmm. So something more than, hey, you're doing a good job raising those grandkids. Right. What they need is an afternoon off. So an individual believer could say, hey, Dave, I know you're raising your grandkids. Would it be helpful sometime in the next few weeks if I could take the kids to the zoo and you could have the afternoon off to, take a nap, go to your own doctor's appointment, take care of yourself. That's one of the things that we do at Sunbeam is provide respite care for those in need, caregivers and grandparents. And the church can do the same thing. The church can partner with agencies like Sunbeam Family Services, or they can look within the confines of their own church and say, hey, we've got several families that are grandparents raising grandkids. Let's surround them with tangible love rather than just speaking a word of peace or saying we'll pray about it. Let's put that into action.
I think that's a good word, because you're right. It's easy for people to say, just encourage them or pat them on the arm and say, we know that must be tough. But this is really a call for the church to really be the hands of Jesus and to be the ministry of Jesus into the life of grandparents. Because I see it when I travel to churches. You can tell, like, even if I don't see them with grandkids, they just kind of have this dazed look, and they're like, where did this part of my life go? They're just kind of, they almost, they freeze up. Right, a lot of people don't know what to do, and they're not really. They didn't expect to have this at this stage in life, and so internally they freeze up, right? And so,
what part of the problem too that most of us are not familiar with is that it's not like raising your kids a second time, because now you've got two generations. You're a generation removed, and so these kids they grew up with cell phones and texting and online. It's a different world. And so these grandparents are not only undertaking the physical, emotional, and financial burden, but they're trying to get their brain wrapped around what is this new communication, and should I allow my kid to have a cell phone? We didn't have cell phones when I was raising my own children, but my grandkids want one, and I don't know whether I should allow that.
Right.
So they need help on all fronts.
Wow. I mean, you're right about that. Raising a second generation, and it's the mindset of students is so vastly different in their culture they live in. You know, I always say the phone has kind of accelerated every struggle.
Right.
Right. It's what I call created what I call the speed of sin. Right. It's just sped everything up. And for grandparents that didn't grow up with that kind of rhythm, you know, and they're like, so this is one of the things that Sunbeam does. Like, you're able to give them wisdom and insight.
We provide training, try to help grandparents understand these are the new challenges, and here's some ways that you can. And the other great thing we do is provide support groups. So we have grandparents raising grandkids who get together on a weekly basis, and we help sponsor and foster that. And so it's such a comfort and encouragement to know I'm not alone.
Right.
I know there's several people, and so we can share some ideas. And is this working for you? Oh, maybe I'll try that with my grandkids. And there's collective wisdom that can be gained through those support groups.
That's really good. I mean, that's really strong. Is there if someone's watching that maybe is a grandparents raising grandkids, is there a word of encouragement you could give to them even right now before they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you know, in the book of Proverbs, one of my favorite verses, it says, the righteous man falls down 7 times and yet gets up. I found it kind of surprising when I first saw that verse. I thought, I didn't think righteous people fell. But we do. We fall, we get discouraged, we get tired.
Right.
And the key is persistence. God calls us to persistence. Sometimes we get this idea, I've got to be perfect. I've got to be the perfect parent. I've got to be the perfect Christian. Mm-hmm. But what God calls us to is persistence. And Peter's a great example of that. He fell a lot. You know, he's fallen in the water. He's fallen down on the job denying Christ. But he was persistent in following Christ. And so I think that's the word of encouragement to grandparents who may be raising grandchildren, is you're going to fall. You're not going to do it perfectly. Don't get discouraged. And look for people who can help you up when you do fall.
Right. So tell everyone, we got a few seconds left, how someone can get a hold of you.
All right. Best way is to go to our website, sunbeamfamilyservices.org.
Okay.
And we've got the list of programs. They can click on that, contact us. Our phone number's listed, or they can email us. That's the best way to do it.
That's fabulous. It's so good to have you on the program, and this is such a huge issue, and I know we probably got a lot of grandparents watching that maybe know grandparents that are raising grandkids, and so whatever the case is, take hope today and thank God that right where you are, that the joy of Jesus can be experienced. And if you need help, you can find it. There's lots of incredible things going on in our city of people like Jim that are helping grandparents to raise grandkids. So thank you so much for tuning in to Joy in Our Town and being a part of the conversation, and take advantage of the good things that are going on in Oklahoma City to find hope for yourself and for your family, for your grandkids. Until next time, this is Joy in Our Town, and I'm Dave Edwards.